Hey everybody. In this video, I'm going to answer your questions about the narrative essay. So when you did that homework assignment that I think was for last week when I asked you for a question or a difficulty, I printed them all out, so I'm just going to go through and yeah, we'll do kind of a mailbag type episode. But I wanted to start just with some of my takeaways from reading everybody's rough drafts. Um, I find with rough drafts for this essay, it's usually like one of two things I end up saying because there's kind of two main parts of this essay. There's the message about language, how your essay shows us that language is important. Which again, for that, I would look back at the assignment sheet and the topics that I put on there, and that'll help you. Because we've been talking about these topics and the essays that we read, and all of them, I think, kind of gave an answer to why language is important. So make sure you check out the assignment sheet. But yeah, there's the message about language, and then there's the storytelling stuff. So most drafts will either do a good job explaining the message about language, but I'll probably want more like dialogue details and stuff like that. Or a draft will do a really good job with the storytelling part, but I won't really be able to see all that clearly, like how it shows us language being important going along with one of those topics. So I would say for a lot of people, I feel like I was telling a lot of people to zoom in more on like a specific scene when we're telling a story in this way, when we're writing this kind of narrative story, you want to really be able to pull the reader in as much as you can and give descriptions of what the setting is like, of the people who are involved. You really want to give as many details and descriptions and dialogue and setting as you can to make it more relatable for the reader, to make it more fun to read, to make it more engaging. You really want the reader to be able to like put themselves into the situation and feel like they can like see the picture of what you're talking about. I would try to have like one or two main scenes, for whatever story you're telling. I think it's important that we all have an idea of like what the most important scene is, because whatever scene is the most important, like maybe at the beginning you're like getting ready and then you drive somewhere and then something happens at the place. Whichever scene is the most important, make sure you spend the most time with that one, and that we have a good sense of what the setting is that you describe, where you are, what it looks like, smells like, sounds like, all those things, and then like tell us what happened. But you just want to make sure that whatever you think is the most important scene is the one that gets the most time, that the reader can really picture what's going on during that. Okay, so that's just some of my takeaways from looking at your drafts, and now I want to get to the questions. Okay, so the first question I had here, someone was asking about picking a topic, that we're having trouble picking a topic, and they also said that at times it felt like they were writing like the descriptive assignment. We also did that descriptive assignment a couple of weeks ago, right? And there are similarities between this essay and the descriptive assignment in that, like I was just saying, you want to describe the setting, you want to give details, and all those things. So that's kind of why I gave you that descriptive assignment. I feel like these two, it kind of goes along with this essay. I was hoping that you guys would get a chance at kind of writing descriptively with that descriptive assignment, and then be able to use some of that in this narrative essay for describing the setting and all that stuff I was just talking about. So the difference is, so it's okay if it kind of feels like a descriptive assignment in terms of, yeah, if you're giving us the setting, or just trying to describe where the stuff was taking place. But the big difference is that our narrative essay has a very specific point it's trying to get across to the reader. For that descriptive assignment, you were just kind of describing a place from your childhood. You weren't trying to tell them, oh, and language is important. Our descriptive essay, it's still an essay, which means there is a thesis to it. The thesis is going to be language is important for whatever reason your paper shows us language being important. So our narrative essay gives descriptions and setting and dialogue and all that stuff, but it's all in the service of getting this message about language across to the reader. So I would say that's the big difference between this and the descriptive assignment. In terms of picking a topic, I know it's hard. This is a difficult assignment. It's a weird assignment. One of the reasons I like to do it is to kind of force you guys out of your comfort zone a little bit, and also to try to try to keep us from doing the same stuff we might have been doing in high school or whatever, where writing a 5-paragraph essay. I want us to get out of that mindset. That's just not how college writing is. We're gonna have to leave a lot of that stuff behind us and kind of find new ways. So I know this is a difficult assignment. What I'll say about picking a topic, it doesn't have to be something that like happened to you personally. It can be something that you witnessed happen to someone else. Or, I'm not saying definitely do this, but if you made something up, how would I even know? I would never know, right? I do think it's easier to write if the thing actually happened, because then you can just go by your memory and you don't have to be like inventing things out of thin air. So, but yeah, you can exaggerate or change stuff. Obviously, I'll never know. Um, and then another thing, if you're struggling with picking a topic, I feel like the talking back topic is one that we've all experienced. I feel like we've all been in some situation where a parent or a teacher or police officer, somebody in authority, has like punished us for talking back in some kind of way. Um, especially in a situation where maybe we weren't actually being rude, like maybe you were just trying to ask a question or give an opinion or just express yourself or whatever, and then you like get punished for it. I feel like we've all had an experience like that. So if you're struggling with a topic, I think you should be able to find something to go with that one, and then you might want to look back at that essay. Really, for whichever topic you're doing, there was kind of like one essay that went with each topic. For whichever topic you're doing, I would consider going back and reading the essay because like in the talking back one, the author really explains like why the talking back thing can be harmful, the consequences it can have for people, and also the way that talking back anyway, like being defiant, is like an empowering thing. So yeah, I think that I guess that's what I would say about the topic. But it doesn't have to be something huge. It doesn't have to be like the perfect thing ever. It could be something you saw on TV, something you witnessed, anything like that. Okay, next question. So this person said, I have trouble putting a story together that flows smoothly and also that makes sense to the reader. I was wondering if, based on the shitty first draft essay that we read the other week, I can just write anything that comes to mind in the Word document. I think it'll be much easier for me writing every single thing in my head down, and from there, just try to eliminate and repeat until I can finally put together and make it sound like a story. Because when you read it, you'll be lost. Right. So I like what this person's saying, and for the rough draft, that's absolutely fine. So in that shitty first drafts essay, Anne Lamott talked about when writing a draft, she says that when she starts writing a draft, it's just typing, it's just making your fingers move. And yeah, I think at the early stages of writing an essay, I think that's a perfectly good approach. It's like this person said in their question, it's a lot easier to have a bunch of stuff on the page and then like move it around and add stuff, delete stuff, whatever you have to do. That's so much better than just having a blank page. So I totally think that's fine. Obviously, for the final version, we want to try to clean it up and revise it, and make sure that we have everything how we want it and it makes sense. Something else you might want to consider if you feel like like if you get off topic or yeah, you want to make sure it flows smoothly. I do think having a little bit of an outline can help like this. I think I'm going to talk about outlining for another question, but I do think having a little bit of an outline and like having it on paper, especially, and like having it next to us when we're typing, can help because then we can, if we like go on a tangent or we start going off topic or talking about something else, we can look back at our outline and be like, oh, like this is what I'm supposed to be talking about right now. Let me make sure I'm sticking to that. So yeah, that is the shitty first draft approach though, right? Is just kind of get everything out there, and then you can get feedback from me, which you guys have gotten by now. If you haven't yet, go and make sure that you check out the comments that I left on your drafts. Check those out. Oh, and I guess while I'm talking about this stuff, I should also say that I sent you guys an email that I moved the due date for the narrative essay to Monday the 25th. So I wanted my comments have been up since yesterday. I just wanted to make sure you guys had enough time to read those comments, think about them, ask me any questions if you have them, and then we're working on revising draft. Okay, next question. This person said, "How can I do a better job expressing my initial thoughts without exaggerating the scenario?" They said that they found it difficult to explain their thoughts or feelings when they were witnessing the like scene that was they used for their narrative essay. So this is a good example. So this person, I think I remember this essay, but this person wrote about like the way that someone else who had an accent and the way that they were treated, and the person writing the story just like saw all of this happening. So this is good. Again, like when I was talking about picking a topic, this is perfect. You can use something that happened to somebody else. Any story that like makes you realize that language is like important in any kind of way. So for this person, I would say, like I've said for a lot of other people, zoom in more. Take us into the scene, paint the picture for us. If you're seeing this happen to the other person, well, describe it. What did they look like? What are they wearing? Where is this happening? What's the lighting like? What do the walls look like? and then just give us everything from your point of view. Just be like, I heard this, and then I tried to get back to my job, but then I heard something like whatever. I heard this guy like get discriminated against for the way that he talks, and then you can give us like dialogue, like this is what the manager said to the guy, and be like, and I was thinking like, wow, this is so messed up. Like he's just talking, like maybe he shouldn't be treated so bad, whatever. But you can definitely just give us your own thoughts. You can either say like, I was thinking blah blah blah, or you just give us the thoughts like, wow, can't believe this, so messed up. We'll see. I'm about to do a video on the sample essay. I think that sample essay that I gave you did a good job using the author's like own thoughts, kind of giving them to us directly. So that's an option too. But yeah, I would just say you really want to zoom in more, make it more of a storytelling type deal. Give it all from your perspective. Tell us what you see, what you hear, and everything like that. Okay, next question. This person says, I don't really have a question. It is just I've been having a hard time staying on topic. I always have too much to say and overshare, and I don't know how to explain it. I'm very interested in the topic, but don't know how to keep it limited and straight to the point. Great question. Great question. I think a lot of us struggle with this, especially if you're used to, kind of sitting down the day before an essay is due, or just like typing an essay out just in one shot, just sitting down for a couple of hours and just finishing out the essay. I think this can happen to us a lot because like you'll have the ideas in your head and stuff, and then you'll start typing, and you either just like make a left turn and start talking about like something, and then you realize like, oh, the thing I'm talking about isn't even related to like my main point. Um, or you just like go through all of your ideas and it's like one page and you're like, okay, those were kind of all my ideas. So I've talked about this before, but making an outline, I think it's the key to this kind of thing. If you feel like you get off topic, you go on tangents, you like lose the thread of what you're supposed to be doing, I think you've got to have something written down, where you can look back at it and be like, oh yes, this is what I'm supposed to do. So for me, it's an outline. So if I'm making an outline, I'm going to put my thesis at the top of the page, which for our narrative essay, our thesis is going to be language is important because, and whichever of those topics that you're doing, whichever reason you're going with for how it shows this language is important. So I would put that at the top of the page, and then I would try to plan out the paragraphs a little bit. Like, okay, paragraph 1, I wake up at my house and get dressed and go in the car. Paragraph 2, I arrive at a job interview and I'm nervous and I describe the place. Paragraph 3, I'm in the job interview and I'm like talking, I'm saying stuff, and then I don't get the job because of the way I talk or something. And then paragraph 4, like, okay, now I'm gonna be like, oh, and then I realized like it was language that was the thing here, and then that's why it's so important. Whatever, you get what I mean though, right? Especially when you're telling a story like this, I think it's important to kind of have it segmented into parts, so you can just tackle one part of the story at a time. So you're not just trying to tell the whole thing and it becomes like this huge paragraph or something. I would try to have a plan of like, yeah, paragraph 1 is going to be this part, paragraph 2 will be this part, paragraph 3, I'll just kind of talk generally about language and like reflect on what I saw and something, and then paragraph 4, like the end of the story, and so on. But I would really encourage you guys to, have a notebook, write this stuff down, just make some bullet points for yourself. Just some bullet points, that's all you need. We don't need the Roman numerals and all this crazy stuff. Just a few bullet points, you have that next to you, and then when you're typing and you feel like you're going on a tangent, you'd be like, wait a minute, what am I supposed to be doing? Okay, here's what this paragraph's supposed to be about. Let me get back on focus. Or maybe you're like, oh, I started talking about something that's supposed to be in paragraph 5. So the thing I just wrote, let me like copy and paste that somewhere else, and I'll get to it later. Let me continue with what I was doing. And I think doing that will help you to stay organized, help you feel like you're on topic, all that kind of stuff. Just yeah, being like intentional. Like you have to think about it, like why do we even use paragraphs? Why are there different paragraphs? It's to keep things organized, to make it feel like it flows. So you want to be thinking like, why am I ending a paragraph here? Why am I starting a new paragraph? Am I doing too much in this one paragraph? Is there a way to break it up? Things like that. All right, let's keep it moving. Other questions. Somebody said, I'm so repetitive in the words I use in an essay. Do you have some tips for trying to avoid that? So students are always worried about being repetitive. I feel like part of the reason for this, I feel like part of this comes from the conclusion paragraph. I posted my video on conclusion paragraphs, but I feel like because they always told you that in the conclusion paragraph, you're just supposed to summarize what you said. I feel like a lot of people end up feeling like they're being repetitive when they do that. And of course, that's repetitive. Like that's literally a repetitive. Summarizing is being repetitive. That's what it is. So you can go back and watch my video on conclusions for my advice on that. But I would say, just not to worry about it too much, unless you're using a word like 100 times in 3 pages. Like, I don't know. I think we get in our own heads about the repetition more than it like bothers the reader, Or it's like one of those things where like, in grade school, if a teacher was looking at your paper and they were like looking for things to say you were wrong about, they'd be like, "Oh, you used this word too many times." It's like, unless you're using this word like every other sentence or something, I probably read your draft and I probably didn't even notice which words you think are repetitive. I would just say to try to write more like how you speak. I think when we speak, none of us are like overly repetitive. So I would say just go with what comes naturally to you. If you're really worried about it down the line, you can use like a thesaurus, which is like a dictionary type thing where you can go on like thesaurus, just type it in, and then you can put in whatever the word is, and it'll give you like other words that kind of mean the same thing, but they don't always mean exactly the same thing. So sometimes like you have the right word. So I would say don't worry too much about repetition. Okay, let's see here. This person also asked, how many sentences is it appropriate to use in the first paragraph for the introduction? I know, like, you might have been told a lot before, like, oh, 5 to 7 sentences or 7 to 9 sentences. I think those are rules that we need to get rid of mostly. I don't think I'm not going to give you a certain number of sentences that it has to be, and especially for this narrative essay, it depends like which approach you're taking to the introduction. Like I talked about in my video on introductions, for this essay, because it's a narrative essay, because it's this weird kind of essay, you could either do kind of a standard introduction, where maybe you talk about language and language being important, and then you get into your story. Excuse me. Or you could do an introduction where you just kind of get into the story. That could be your first paragraph, just like the very beginning of the story. So it depends which one of those you're doing. I would say you probably want like, I don't know, at least 4 sentences, but I don't know. I don't want to say it needs to be any certain number. And it can be, as long as you think that it needs to be. But I guess if you're doing a standard introduction, so you would need like at least 4 sentences. I don't know. But I'm not going to be counting sentences. That's not something I'm worried about. Okay, let me see here. This person also asked a question about commas. I'm going to talk about grammar later in the course. I know you guys are worried about grammar. I know we have this like exit test that you guys have to take at the end. That's probably going to have some grammar stuff on it. So we'll get to the grammar. I don't want you to worry about it too much right now. Right now, I just want you to focus on like writing an engaging story, getting the message across, the organization. I want us to focus on all that stuff first, just because I think it's honestly a lot more important than grammar. But they asked about commas. I would say with commas, obviously, if you have a list of like 3 things, milk, cheese, and eggs, use the comma after each one. Another big one is like if you start a sentence with the word if, like, if you're going to the store, can you pick me up some milk? There'd be a comma right there. If you're going to the store, comma, can you pick me up some milk? So I'm not too worried about commas. If anything, I feel like we overuse commas. I feel like something that we've picked up like from text messaging. So when you're texting, we don't really use like periods, right? If someone uses a period, like they're pissed off at you. So we'll just like string a bunch of stuff together with commas when really they're like actually full sentences that should have periods. So I don't worry too much about the commas. There's some basic rules, and we'll talk about it more in an upcoming video. All right. Somebody else asked, "Can I open a narrative essay with a question?" Yeah, sure. Yeah, okay, I guess so. If you want to, if it makes sense, if you feel like you have a good question that's going to be like thought provoking to the reader or something. I think in my introduction video I gave the example of the little second grade girl that I worked with who started an essay. Do you have a favorite color? So we don't want to be doing that. We don't want to ask a question just to be asking one. Like if you actually think it adds something to your essay, then yeah, that's fine. Like I said before, I'm not into the whole hook thing. I don't really care about it. So don't start with a question just because you feel like you have to. But if you want to start with a question, yeah, you can do that. They also asked how many people need to be involved. I guess in the story, it doesn't really matter. You probably need at least 2. I guess probably at least you and someone else. I guess. But I'm not really concerned about how many people are in the story. Okay. Okay, somebody asked, how should we start the first draft? It's a pretty good question. I had to think about that one for. I was like, how do we start the draft? Huh? Never thought about it that way. So if you're talking about just like really getting started, like like we haven't really done anything yet. The first thing's the topic. You want to decide. Take a look at the assignment sheet again. The narrative essay assignment sheet. I believe it's under week 3. But yeah, definitely go back and look at that. And it gives you the 4 topics. Unfair treatment, culture, talking back, and word choice. So you can watch my videos talking about the essays where I try to explain all the topics more. But first, I would try to decide which one of those topics you're going to do. And then, you want to think of the story that you can tell that fits into that topic. Once you've done that and you're trying to start the draft, just start telling the story, Just start explaining what happened. Something that I think we do too much is that we want to write the essay in like the order that it'll be read eventually, and that's just not something we have to do. Start with something that you know is going to be in the essay. Start with the most important scene. Just like start telling the story, and then I think once you start doing that, maybe like you'll see the things about language a little more, and you can start explaining how it shows us language is important. Get your introduction, conclusion. But I think a good way to write essays is to kind of build them from the inside out like that. Like start with something you know is going to be in there just to get started, and then you can fill out everything else as it comes. All right. Okay, last question. Someone said one thing that's been difficult for me is getting enough pages done with a limited amount of topics. Yeah, so I know that you guys might be having trouble getting the 3 pages that I'm asking for here. So some ways that you could try to, make sure that your essay is long enough. Details, dialogue, setting, all of that stuff it's good stuff to have. It makes the reading engaging. It brings the reader into it. Ultimately, it makes them more convinced because I think we find it more convincing when we're like engaged in the story. But all that stuff also takes up a lot of space, right? If you're giving dialogue, like that's sentences, if you're describing, oh, the walls were yellow and there was a weird picture on the wall, there was a bookcase, there was a printer with a bunch of stuff on it. Sentences, sentence, so that stuff can really help you to fill out more details, more dialogue, more setting can help you make it longer. Also, make sure that you fully explain the message about language. Make sure that it's really clear to the reader how your story shows us that language is important. I think students tend to under-explain. They feel like they're being repetitive or something. I would say I would rather have you guys feel like you're over-explaining than under-explaining. So make sure you've really explained the message. And like I've said before, I do think making an outline helps us with how long the paper is. Because if we have a plan like that for our paragraphs, it kind of forces us to say everything that we can in the one paragraph before we move to another one, and it forces us to like hold some stuff back and everything. So yeah, add more details, dialogue, stuff like that. Explain the message more, and then maybe like think about your paragraphs. Think if you can like add stuff, stuff like that. And I know that doesn't really make it super easy, but hopefully that gives you a little bit of advice on how to make it longer. Let me think. What else do I want to say about the essay? I think that's it. Again, make sure. So 3 things that I'm looking for here. 3 main things that I'm looking for. One is details, setting, descriptions. Details is one. A second one, dialogue. I want you to have at least one, sentence that someone says. Whether even if it's you overhearing someone or if it's something said on the TV, whatever it is, I want some dialogue. And the third one is the message about language. That your essay shows us language is important for this reason. And as long as you have those 3 things, I think you will do pretty well on this. All right. If you have any other questions, send me an email and I'll try to help more. But that's it for now. See ya.